First of all, how good was the car? How clean were those laps?
Yeah, I think in general qualifying felt a little bit more together compared to the other sessions, where I always felt like we're still lacking a little bit. But then I think, with the final changes that we made going into the night, that seemed to help us a bit. And then, throughout qualifying, just improving nicely. In Q2, of course, I was on scrub tires. And to be honest, I was a little bit surprised in the first run how much the new tires actually gave me. But yeah, it was a good lap already, with a little bit of a help also, of course, from Yuki with the toe. So that was very nice of him to give up one of his runs. And then, the second lap, I was not sure if I was going to improve just because of the toe that I got. But then, again, just found a little bit more lap time in the corners, and that gave me then, a little bit more lap time. So happy with that, happy with the one lap performance at the end then in qualifying. Now, of course, the big question mark is, can we keep that up in the race?
A secret team radio between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri just leaked, and it's already triggered an FIA investigation. The message could prove McLaren coordinated track positions illegally during qualifying in Abu Dhabi. If the FIA confirms it, McLaren could face serious penalties and Verstappen stands to benefit big time heading into the race. Subscribe right now, because this last-minute drama could change the outcome of the final Grand Prix of the season. Just hours after Abu Dhabi qualifying ended, Formula One was hit with one of the most explosive twists of the entire season. A previously unreleased team radio between McLaren drivers Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri was leaked to the media, raising immediate suspicions of coordinated race manipulation. The message appeared to reference a direct instruction related to position swaps or on-track management during qualifying. And within moments of its appearance online, the FIA announced a formal inquiry into McLaren's internal communications. The radio message, short but highly charged, reportedly featured Norris asking if they were still holding the previous arrangement, followed by a cryptic reply from Piastri's engineer confirming Plan Echo stays. While those words may seem harmless on the surface, their timing during the final Q3 runs raised alarm bells. Article 26.1 of the FIA sporting regulations explicitly prohibits any team orders that influence qualifying positions unless justified by safety or force majeure. If this exchange was part of a pre-agreed plan to manipulate track order, it could constitute a breach. What made the situation more intense was the fact that both Norris and Piastri qualified ahead of Max Verstappen, who was visibly frustrated with traffic and dirty air during his final run. Verstappen's team, Red Bull Racing, reportedly submitted a request for clarification shortly after the radio leak surfaced, asking whether all Q3 procedures were in compliance. This raised the stakes even further, because if McLaren's communication is ruled illegal, Verstappen could be promoted on the grid or handed a strategic advantage before the lights go out on Sunday. The FIA confirmed in a statement that the radio content was being reviewed alongside full telemetry and GPS data to determine if there was a deliberate attempt to manage position for competitive gain. While team strategy is common in races, using coded instructions to block or guide in qualifying is a serious violation. What's more, McLaren did not include this radio in their official submission of post-session communications, a fact that now puts the team under intense scrutiny. Inside the paddock, tensions escalated fast. McLaren initially refused to comment on the leak, but a team spokesperson later acknowledged that internal procedures are under review. Ferrari and Mercedes were also made aware of the incident, as any ruling that alters grid positions could affect their own strategies. The fact that this investigation emerged so late in the weekend, just before park firm conditions, meant that teams could be forced to adapt without knowing whether penalties or changes were coming. What does this mean for Max Verstappen? Everything. The reigning world champion had a compromised final Q3 run due to traffic, and now sits behind both McLarens on the grid. If the FIA rules that either Norris or Piastri received illegal assistance, Verstappen could gain position without even touching the track. In a season finale where every strategic edge counts, a McLaren penalty could open the door for Verstappen to dominate Turn 1 and control the race from the front, exactly what Red Bull needs to seal the season in style. And perhaps the most striking part of this drama is the secrecy. The radio was not broadcast during the session, nor released in the standard FIA communication logs. That raises even bigger questions: who leaked it, why now, and what else has gone unreported? As the FIA launches its investigation, the entire Formula One world holds its breath. Because this isn't just a controversy, it's a potential game changer, right on the edge of the most crucial race of the year. Max Verstappen entered qualifying in Abu Dhabi with strong pace, leading the timing charts in FP3 and showing impressive balance in the high-speed third sector. His first Q3 run was clean, clocking a provisional P2 time just a tenth off the top. But during his second push, Verstappen encountered a sudden bottleneck. Both McLaren drivers ahead slowed mid-outlap, forcing Verstappen into turbulent air and disrupting his tire prep. By the time he began his final flyer, the grip window had already faded, costing him vital hundredths into turn 1. The data confirms the effect. Verstappen's second Q3 lap was slower than his first, something rare for a Red Bull at this stage of a weekend. Sector 1 was already compromised, with a delayed throttle application out of turn 3. In Sector 2, the loss was even more visible. His minimum speeds through turns 6 and 7 were down by 4 km/h compared to Q2. Red Bull engineers later explained that front tire temperatures dropped too low on the formation lap due to traffic, a clear sign that his outlap was not within target thresholds. Meanwhile, both McLaren drivers managed near-perfect final laps. Norris and Piastri were positioned comfortably ahead on track, with clear air and optimal tire prep. Their deltas improved steadily from sector to sector, with Norris clocking his personal best lap at the exact moment Verstappen hit traffic turbulence. What raised suspicion was the near-identical pace management between the two McLarens during the outlap, a pattern that FIA analysts are now dissecting as part of the investigation. Should the FIA determine that McLaren used coordinated outlap tactics to manipulate track position, the consequences could range from reprimands to grid penalties. Under current regulations, any form of team orchestration that interferes with another competitor's performance in qualifying is considered a sporting violation. If telemetry and GPS data show deliberate slowing with the intent to affect Verstappen's prep lap, McLaren could face time deletions or even post-qualifying penalties. For Verstappen, the implications are massive. He currently starts behind Norris and Piastri, boxed in by two teammates with strong launch potential. That formation limits his options off the line and increases the risk of being trapped during the opening laps. A repositioning, especially if one or both McLarens are penalized, would give Verstappen access to the racing line, better DRS opportunities, and cleaner tire management. In a race where overtaking is difficult, every grid spot counts. There's also the psychological impact. Verstappen was heard on the team radio saying, "They blocked us again," immediately after his final Q3 lap. It's not the first time McLaren has been accused of playing hard with outlap pacing this season. If the investigation validates Verstappen's concerns, it could fuel ongoing tension between Red Bull and McLaren, two teams now locked in both driver and constructor battles. The FIA's ruling will be more than procedural, it will set a precedent heading into the winter break. As of now, the FIA has requested full radio transcripts, GPS overlays, and throttle trace comparisons from McLaren. They're also reviewing Red Bull's onboard footage and delta timing between the two teams. Until the results are confirmed, Verstappen's grid position remains provisional, but the Red Bull garage is confident. If McLaren is found guilty of interference, Verstappen may yet start closer to the front, turning a blocked lap into a golden opportunity on Sunday. Outlap management in Formula One has become one of the most delicate tools in modern qualifying strategy. Unlike the old days where drivers simply left the pits and pushed flat out, today's cars require precise tire conditioning, surface and core temperatures must be in an exact range for peak grip. That's why teams choreograph outlaps down to the second. Drivers are instructed to hit specific corner speeds, brake points, and delta times, not to race, but to prepare the car's tires and brakes for one perfect flying lap. Any disruption to that rhythm can ruin a lap before it starts. The controversy with McLaren stems from how closely Norris and Piastri ran their outlaps in Q3. According to FIA data, both drivers maintained near-identical lift points in Sector 1 and delayed their final acceleration through Sector 2, bunching up the cars behind, including Verstappen. That would be legal if it occurred naturally, but if team radio confirms they were instructed to maintain this position deliberately, and it disadvantaged a rival, then it becomes a sporting offense. The difference lies in intent, and that's what the FIA is now investigating. Telemetry plays a key role here. The FIA has access to live throttle, brake, and steering inputs, along with GPS overlays that track every car's position in real time. If Norris and Piastri were running at lower throttle input or delaying gear shifts without reason, especially in areas where no traffic or yellow flags were present, it would indicate artificial slowing. Combine that with radio messages referring to plan echo or holding position, and a clear pattern begins to form. These are not coincidences, they're traceable actions. This tactic, if confirmed, is not new. Teams have used coded language for decades to manage internal strategies without violating the letter of the rulebook. But in 2025, with AI-driven analytics and fully archived data streams, it's much harder to hide intent. Coded messages like plan modes, delta targets, or scenario echoes are designed to be ambiguous, but when paired with matching telemetry anomalies, the FIA can reconstruct the truth. In recent years, penalties have been handed out even when the language was subtle, as long as the competitive manipulation was provable. For McLaren, the timing of the alleged tactic is crucial. The Q3 session was highly condensed due to late yellow flags in Q2, and tire warm-up windows were tighter than usual. Red Bull had planned Verstappen's outlap to be aggressive, with a rapid core buildup through sectors 1 and 2. When both McLarens slowed simultaneously ahead of him, the cold airflow disrupted that plan. Verstappen's tires fell outside the optimal window, leading to the drop in grip we saw, particularly in Sector 3. A loss of just 3 degrees in temperature can equate to multiple tenths on track. There's also the question of legality versus sportsmanship. Teams are allowed to manage their drivers' positioning on outlaps, but not at the expense of other competitors. Article 27.4 of the sporting regulation states that drivers must not unnecessarily impede another car, and if team instructions contributed to such impediment directly or indirectly, then it becomes a gray area the stewards must judge. In recent cases, penalties have been applied even without blocking incidents, simply for unnatural outlap coordination. For Verstappen and Red Bull, the opportunity lies in precedent. If the FIA determines this was a coordinated tactic designed to influence Q3 outcomes, they have grounds to impose grid penalties or delete laps. That would lift Verstappen up the order and grant him track position over McLaren. On a circuit where clean air is king and overtaking is limited, the impact of gaining 1 or 2 grid slots is enormous. It changes pit stop windows, defensive strategies, and could ultimately decide who controls the race's opening phase.